doing it this summer. And it is known as basically convenience store heroin is the kind of common name that they have for this drug. And it is available in your local convenience stores. The problem with that, this is has really the same effect as methamphetamine. And so what is happening is individuals are buying this product. They think that it's from the drugstore, that it's perfectly safe. And what is happening is they are getting addicted. And as our reporter friend here, he did an in-depth story on it this fall in the Mississippi Free Press, and really kind of highlighted particularly like a current businessman who was addicted to the product. And most of these people, what was happening too is when they testified this summer, members of the medical association, is they are coming in and they're presenting with symptoms, and they're really having to fold back the layers to find out that it actually is an addiction to this. So if you Google this product and you'll put addiction, you'll see a number of treatment centers across the country now are having to help people get off this product. It's a product that has no age verification whatsoever. Your child could go in there and get it, just like they're getting a pack of gum. And so there's no warning really to consumers or anything like that. So a number of growing states have outlawed this product. I believe there's 7 right now. And I think there's pending legislation in every legislature that's in across the country. So what this bill does, it's very simple. If you go to, I'm sorry.
Line 196.
Yeah, line 106.
196.
196. We are simply adding this in to the list of drugs that will be considered, I believe, a class 1. And so it will be regulated just like everything else is. Just for note too, Alabama and Tennessee have also banned this drug as well. So any questions?
Senator Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Boyd. Does this TN-17 have any legitimate medical purpose at all?
It's banned and it's for use in a couple of countries, but it's used for things like depression. It could be used for irritable bowel syndrome, but in those places it is by prescription. So it's not, and it has medical side effects, huge medical side effects. It gives people a real big high. What happens is they start using, they'll go use 1 bottle, which is about $26. It ranges from about $26 to $35 in this state. And anyway, I was going to buy one and bring it, but it's $26 and I didn't want to waste it. But you buy it, and then what happens is that high doesn't become enough. So you get more and more and more. So it produces that type of opioid high.
So that was going to be my question too, because one of our fellow senators who deals in legal drugs asked me about the depression. I think that it's prescribed and quite effective for depression purposes.
Actually, in this country, it is not prescribed for depression. So there's, it is not prescribed for depression. This is kind of a research chemical in this. It is prescribed in some places in Europe and I think South America.
All right. I think I saw Senator Thomas.
Yes, sir. Well, I think that's a great question. Senator Wiggins, I know, and he may have been a co-sponsor, some other people had a piece of legislation this year, but we're going to have to, I think, come back to the table with some of that pieces of legislation that would set up a procedure where those drugs that keep slipping through the cracks, because you're right, I feel like every year we come and there's a new drug we have to add to the table, so we can't get out of session before a new drug problem of this has cropped up. And so he had a piece of legislation that would have really kind of more proactively dealt with this. So it may be coming out, but I do know that there was a piece of legislation to kind of deal with this. So, we've been encouraged to particularly go ahead and do this one because we're not sure about that piece of legislation right now.
Yes, sir.
I did not bring the actual, it was $26 and I love y'all that.
Would you mind passing that around?
Yes,
I'd like to
absolutely.
see that.
Well, and here's a medical journal article, if y'all would like to read that from the Mississippi Medical Association, that talks about that. And I also have the full article that was in the Jackson Press, that the reporter did, that really kind of gave a really comprehensive overview, of the testimony that was given in the House hearing, which they did a great job at.
Senator Barnett, I think, had a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Boyd, without putting a reverse repealer in this bill, I think it's good and I would like to see it moving, but would you be open to, when we get to the floor of this bill, to the possibility of adding a group?
Absolutely. I mean, depending on, the drug and the information, we've got a lot of information about this drug, but I'm not opposed to if there's other drugs out there that we need to add to this bill. Absolutely.
But my question was, without, I don't want to put a reverse repealer in and slow the progress and all this. I just want to have a commitment from you that if there, that should be on here that we can find proof of. Would you be open or would you be okay with an amendment to do that on the floor?
Absolutely. I think this is well documented and I would appreciate, like, some of them, you can go ahead and give me maybe some possibilities of that so that I can do some research and get the evidence on that as well. So, because we've got a pretty good case here of and evidence of why this is bad. So I would love to get some of the, I would love to kind of do that for the other ones that you have to, just to kind of reassure the body as they're voting on something that this is kind of the same standard.
Okay, thank you.
Senator Turner Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I see the copy of the photo refers to Zaza. Pronounce it. Is this sold as under any other brand name? And the reason I'm asking is, there was the kratom issue, but I think kratom is actually a compound or substance that's used to make other drugs. So it's an ingredient. Is that the same scenario?
This is sold under a number of brand names. I think T-Red. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different names for it. The way that we have the language worded in this bill, we're real particular on how we worded this. And it makes sure it's not like the kratom that is actually in legitimate drugs that are prescribed by the FDA. This has the portions in it, and the way that it's worded, we should not have no problem and hurdles with that, making sure that we don't overregulate something that is actually in other legitimately prescribed drugs.
So kind of like what I understood with kratom, that can actually be ordered, I guess, as a sole independent ingredient or chemical. Can this, I don't know, how do you pronounce this?
Tianeptine.
Tianeptine, can that be purchased as an isolated?
So the tianeptine can come in different formulas. It can come in liquid, it can come in powder, it can come in different things like that. None of which, any of those variants, and I'm not an expert on kratom, but none of the things that are licensed by the FDA, and the FDA has approved for use. So we haven't really gone into overregulation here, because I was concerned about making sure we were really targeting what, this language really targeted what we needed it to.
Barnett.
Senator Boyd, on last year, and I appreciate you working with me on this last year, but I had a bill out there that talked about the problem with certain stores selling loose cigarettes.
Yes, sir.
And if we're gonna be, and since we're talking about this drug and we're being honest here and open, I think may not be fair for you to say, but I'm okay with saying is that a lot of these things are primarily happening in stores that are not really governed by the Convenience Store Association. Maybe correct in saying a lot of these things are more prevalent in African American neighborhoods, but these stores are named. So my question is that while we are trying to take these drugs off the shelves and ban them and those type of things, are we gonna ever consider having someone that really check these stores out, see what's on the shelves and give us a report of we just found this out. I'm sure that there's a Yaha and some others that's out there that you know that maybe we don't get to see right now. But if there's somebody that's actually doing their job, come back and I think this will help a lot too in some of these communities where these things are being gas station and you see, you know, all around the gas station where you got Kratom, where you got all of these things that are listed out there. And nobody's checking it to make sure that these are things that can be sold legally. There any consideration in doing something like this when we continue to or try to combat this drug problem that we have?
Senator, I think that you bring up an excellent point, kind of outside of what this particular bill is, because we're adding this particular compound in. But Senator, I think you bring up an excellent point, and there isn't a unit from the Attorney General's office that's funded through FDA that goes out and does those tobacco checks. And then we also have the tax commission, who also has agents that go out and check to make sure that underage minors are not getting alcohol. We should probably, it'd be great to call this, and would be happy to help facilitate that with you, to bring those investigators in who are out in those communities to see if we can bring them in and get their assistance in looking at this, to proactively look at all these different particular issues that you're talking about.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank y'all. And for clarification, by putting this language in as I think it's a Schedule 2 drug, this is going to require a prescription. So it won't be simply like under 18. This would be for anyone.
Right.
On this. And what about like the mail order type where you can go online and try to get that kind of stuff? Will this also affect that part of that?
It would affect that. So you should not be able to legally get this in the state without that prescription.
And so following up, who is the enforcement on that? So once this becomes law, assuming it does, then is it
It would be the Bureau
the Bureau of
Narcotics. So that regulates all medicine and medical within the state, just like they do everything else.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? Comments? Senator Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Putting it on Schedule 1.
Yeah, I think this is 2, isn't it?
It's in schedule right now.
Okay, sorry.
And I do see that Schedule 2 has been brought forward, so maybe that's an option, but being on Schedule 1, does that make the possession of this a felony if we do this? And I can get that answer later. That's just a question that I would have, because if so, I go back to the definition, and the definition is vague enough that if they try to indict for this, you see the specificity in all the other drug compounds. I believe a good lawyer like Senator Simmons down here would bring into question the definition. So I'm just bringing that, I guess, to the attention of drafting, is if it's a felony, it may struggle at indictment. I just want to make that.
Would you be opposed to amending this to put it in Schedule 2 versus Schedule 1?
I would not be opposed to that.
Okay.
No.
I can tell the health department to get more.
And I just want to ask that question to clarify before we get.
I think it's a great question.
It's a good question.
Senator Simmons. All right, you recognize to offer the amendment to put this, I'm sorry, Senator Turner Ford?
I just have a question.
Yes, sure.
So what does that mean?
Schedule 1 is a substance that's got a high likelihood to lead to addiction and no accepted medical use. Schedule 2 is the exact same thing with a limited medical use that you'd have to get a prescription for and be highly regulated. Unfortunately, I'm not terribly, I can't say the difference between the criminal penalties, but I'm assuming Schedule 2 has slightly less criminal penalties, but I can't stand behind that.
Were there any other questions? I'm sorry, I jumped the gun on that amendment. All right, Senator Simmons, you're recognized for the amendment.
TNFT.
Would you like to speak to the amendment, Senator Boyd?
I'm not opposed to the amendment.
All right, any other questions on the amendment? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. All right. Any other questions on the bill? We'll recognize Senator Boyd to close on her presentation.
If there's no further questions.
All right, Senator England?
Yeah, title suspension do pass as amended.
All right, you've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. Thank you, Senator Boyd. We very much
Thank you.
appreciate your time this morning. All right, we'll jump down over to Senator Sparks. I think he also has a bill and may need to get to another committee meeting potentially. 2337. You recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2337 does one thing. There's crimes that can be committed, criminal acts. You can also be charged with conspiring to commit that particular act. All this law does is make the statute of limitations for the prosecution of conspiracy be the same as the underlying act, so that we don't have a different period of time that we could prosecute conspiracy versus the actual act. That's all it does.
And will you give us an example maybe of where this is not parallel?
For instance, if you have a possession of a narcotic or the sale of a narcotic, that crime may have a 3-year maximum sentence, but it may have a 2-year statute of limitations from the time you are arrested that they have to indict and prosecute you. But conspiracy for the same act would have a 5-year potential period of time that you could pursue it. So it's just whatever the underlying statute of limitations, because when, as I understand, when the code is silent as to period of time that a crime can be pursued, then it falls into a general 2-year statute. So, and then crimes like murder, I believe rape is also one, does not have a statute of limitations that can be pursued. So we just want to make sure that there's a conspiracy. Often that comes out after the fact, but we just want it to have the same statute of limitations as far as prosecution as the underlying offense for consistency.
So there are actual examples of where the conspiracy is longer than the actual underlying crime.
That's correct.
Questions for Senator Sparks on this? All right, recognize for a motion.
Title sufficient to pass.
Heard the motion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. Okay. Senator Turner Ford and Ethan's done a little more reading on your previous question, so he would like to.
Yeah, there's no difference between the two schedules on criminal penalties. Whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, it's just the amount that is is found.
Thank you for that. All right, Senator Barnett, you are recognized for 2239.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that this is a very simple bill, but I'm gonna be reserved in saying that. But it is a very good bill. And basically what it does, Mr. Chairman, or members of this committee, is that it will allow highway patrol,
Any substitute now?
I'm sorry, on the committee. So that's what I'm speaking on.
Yes. All right, so just
And
for
it
those
was
of you, there was a packet and then there was a committee substitute that's loose flying out there, so make sure you're looking at the right. Okay, sorry.
And so basically what this would do is that any officer of the state of Mississippi, a highway patrol, have the opportunity to work all duty in the civil law enforcement, just like you allow sheriff deputies and municipal police to do the same thing right now. Highway patrol is currently is currently the only agency that's not allowed to do this, or Department of Wildlife Fisheries. Those agencies who have been trained in law enforcement can now have an opportunity to work an extra job, and they're not allowed to do this. And we do know that, a lot of them are underpaid, and some of them would like to have the opportunity to continue to work in a capacity that they're already working in. I've already spoken with Commissioner Kendall, and he's in agreement with this as well. So, and basically the only changes are from old law to what's already being used to us now. Starts on line 20 to line 23, where it says that the director of any state law enforcement division must approve such use of the uniform official weapon and vehicle by highway patrol officer. And then on line 27, order director of interstate law enforcement division. That's basically what the bill does, Mr. Chairman. That's the explanation of the bill, and I'm open to any questions.
Okay, I do have a question. So I remember last time when we were doing this for local law enforcement, we had an insurance requirement that in the event that the officer that was off duty had some incident and someone was harmed or property was destroyed, then there was insurance provisions required by the employing entity. Is that
This
still
is the
included?
same thing. The only thing you did was just added the new language. Everything else is currently how it's being done. So only thing we added was just giving the highway patrol and i.e. Hawaii fisheries, those agents the opportunity to do the same responsibility.
What about Capitol Police,
Capitol Police would be included.
MBN, MBI?
You said it's on your state. Highway patrol, and of course it has that, the director of any state law enforcement division, so that encompasses all.
All right, I see we have the Commissioner of Public Safety with us. I know you've been working with him on this legislation. Would you like to call on him to,
If he wants to add something to,
you're recognized?
or if the committee wants to hear.
I think all this does is allow you to say all.
Do you get officers requesting this type of situation?
We do, and I can say in particular, an example, we've been requesting provided for all the officers security, capital through the district, downtown Florida. This is and they can use their additional presence of Capitol Police officers.
And who pays for the gas and the hours and all that? Is that the hiring entity?
Yes, that would be the private.
Establishes the hourly rates or the compensation for the officers? In negotiation with,
Negotiation.
all right, questions by committee members? Senator Turner Ford?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner. Do you anticipate, I guess, maintaining a file with is there a contract that will be executed between the agency with the private entity and the officer?
I believe that's how we do it. Making that contract.
And what do you all anticipate regarding limits of liability insurance that would be required? And this would, if implemented, it would be strictly enforced that any law enforcement officer who would be so employed as anticipated by the bill would have to be approved by the executive director of that particular. Thank you.
Senator Simmons?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the questions you raised at the beginning of the presentation of the bill, because I remember we talked about this in detail the last time. It starts in line 35, where any action or omission from these contractual relationships will hold certainly that the state and for instance, if it was the county or the city, in this case, the state, and that language starts at 62. So all of that is existing language, which is not being changed. And so I think that gives a lot of us some comfort that as far as the indemnification and as far as the liability for DPS and or our county or our cities in these type of situations will not have to be able to.
Yes, sir. Great point. All right, I thought I saw another hand. Senator Hickman?
Yeah, I just had one question. How do we know or do we have any statistic on how often this is being used, like on the county and municipal level?
I can answer that question. We have a lot of, and a lot of places are short in some areas on law enforcement. So we have a lot of people that may work as sheriff deputy on one shift and now they're working in another town as a regular patrolman. And so I see it a lot. Just in my Senate district, just about every community that I represent has.
Now we're talking about these people working in the private space, not like a deputy going.
Well, what I'm saying is that these individuals who I'm talking about also work private jobs where you got county deputies or patrolmen, and they do this to supplement their income. And so highway patrol is asking to be treated the same way. Is that can we also supplement our income by doing these extra duties that we allow our county and our municipal officers?
Now, I don't have a problem with the bill. I was asking that question, have we run into the issues of liability and that type of situation? That was what my question.
I can't answer that question for you, but I just do know that there's a lot of municipalities, counties that allow their officers to do this type of work. Like I said, I think one of our best, well-trained departments of law enforcement should be allowed to do the same.
Senator Thomas?
Senator,
Yes,
is anywhere in the bill deal with limited use of the vehicle? You have an employee. And to say Home Depot to pick up something or pick up lunch.
I'm sure that that's the reason why we put the language in there that it's up to the discretion of the director. That the director will make sure that the use of that particular vehicle shall only be limited to the duties that they're performing at a specific location and not to be.
Right, but that's what the instructions that would be, I mean, part of the agreement that. I need to make sure that the vehicles are going to a particular point and they don't.
And I think also that, like Senator Simmons said, that the hiring party also has to play a role in it also. And I'm sure that they will make sure that they're trying to cover themselves as much as possible too, by making sure that those type of things that you just asked about don't happen.
You aware, Senator Barnett, of any instances like Senator Hickman was talking about where on the local level, because we haven't allowed it yet for the state police, but on the local level, because I know there was a lot of discussion, debate, which I thought was good in the committee. Have we seen any of those instances where there was a wreck or an injury or a shooting or anything like that that would call into question the efficacy of what we were doing?
I haven't heard of any of those, but I'm sure, I mean, we got a room for the lawyers here this morning, and so I'm sure that.
Has anyone, I mean, honestly, I haven't heard one way or the other, so I'm just curious if y'all heard it in any of those instances in your areas. Anybody? Okay. Just curiosity. All right. Any other questions, Senator Sparks?
Just kind of based on Senator Thomas's question, if I'm not mistaken, Mississippi Highway Patrol, most vehicles are already take-home vehicles because they are tagged to that particular officer, F Troop, it's F-22. So there's already provisions in place, I'm sure, about personal use. The other thing I would say about the bill is that we've tried to have trooper schools. We have brought people out of trooper schools. As I understand it, we're getting poached by surrounding states offering more money despite the raises we've given. So I think this is an opportunity for a Mississippian who becomes a Mississippi Highway Patrol officer to supplement their income and stay. In addition, it's consistent with what we did when we brought MDOT officers over to DPS and became the CTED Commercial Transportation Division. I asked the commissioner at that time, and he was very gracious to consider to allow those CTED officers to continue to work because one of those CTED officers is the police chief in one of the small municipalities in my district. So I think we all talk about having better trained officers in leading our forces. And I think with Mississippi Highway Patrol, if those officers are out there, particularly being able to serve in the community, often they're our best trained officers. So I think it would be good, but I just wanted to make sure on those issues that we were trying to be consistent within the agency. Thank you.
Absolutely. Senator Super, did you have a question? Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, promotion. Senator England,
Title sufficient due pass committee sub.
you've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. All right, we have Senator Thompson has a bill, I believe, on this one. No, sorry. You do, but we'll come back to you. All right. We'll go to Senator Blackwell. So he has graciously come up. Senate Bill 2297, Senator Blackwell.
Mr. Chairman. This bill is sort of at the request of our mayor up in South Haven. He was told that by one of our police officers that there's only one working intoxilizer in DeSoto County, and that's at the Hernando Police Station. So South Haven, Horn Lake, Olive Branch, DeSoto County Sheriffs, and the Mississippi Highway Patrol all use that one machine for suspected DUI drivers. And apparently the problem is that it's the Intoxilizer 8000 is over 20 years old. They don't make replacement parts for it anymore. The Department of Public Safety hasn't been able to purchase any. And I think the statute actually requires the identify the specific intoxicator, which is, like I said, is outdated. So what this bill does just allows the department to purchase at least one model of an intoxicator equipment that's going to be available. I spoke to the commissioner about it. He's supportive of it. In fact, we're trying to get some money in appropriations to get the money. That's an explanation of the bill. You have to yield for questions.
All right, questions? Senator Turner Ford.
I don't do this often. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is directing who to purchase this equipment?
Well, it'd be the Department of Safety.
Where would it be located? If purchased?
Whether they're gonna, I think he's asking for 225 of them.
Oh,
So they're gonna be throughout the state.
I
I
see.
imagine each county. Mr. Chairman, if it's permissible,
Yes,
can
sir.
I ask the
Oh, absolutely.
commissioner to
Yes, please.
interject here?
So you've been making this request for a couple of years, get funding, and the pipeline, if I saw 30,000. This is the DPS providing pipeline across the state. I think what they're asking, we should buy their own equipment. It's all the DPS, will prove that. So I'll give them to I guess, to the state. And integrity.
How expensive are these units?
They're requesting 225 and 5 million. So they're.
Okay, Senator Simmons.
That's not my.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think our friendly, our commissioner of DPS probably, I saw some of the sparks of ears light up when you started talking to commissioner. I think you giving him a way to defend these DUI cases. If we don't get that software updated.
May I quote the commissioner from this committee hearing? Thank you, Senator Simmons.
Speaking to the microphone, right? All right. Other questions? That was a good one. Any other questions by committee members? All right, to close on your presentation, Senator Blackwell.
That's it.
Okay.
That's
Oh, Senator Turner Ford, I'm sorry, I saw him.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So is this updated model, is there a model that currently that's being used by the crime lab? That was my question. Who's going to perform the calibration checks if this equipment is only located in one county, a particular location?
Well, I would imagine the department does it.
So how many of these units do we have? The older ones, the ones that are coming dinosaurs, how many do we have across the state?
I don't know.
So what is the game plan for the state? I mean, I know we're talking about just one in this bill up in his portion of the state, but what about the rest of the state? What's the game plan for this? It's on the end. Senator Sparks.
I may have misunderstood. So this bill is just to provide an intoxilizer for DeSoto County?
My understanding is that in statute, it says you can only use one, and that's this intoxilizer 8,000. So we're just changing it so they have the ability to get one, but it has to be whatever the state gets.
So the Department of Public Safety could designate another authorized
Right.
machine because we
And-
can't get the 8,000.
Intoxilizer 9,000, if there's such an animal.
Because I do go back to Senator Turner Ford's question, is the state, generally the crime lab is required to perform calibrations. And when I first started practicing law, I actually sent letters to them asking for their calibrations, but every court seems to accept the piece of paper now without the hearsay objection as calibration. If we change the machine, then, we do have different issues, but I understand Senator Blackwell's issue because they're generally at the jail. So there's at least got to be 82, but you got to have backups. Because I know some jails used to have a couple of them, but I just want to make sure that I understood that. Thank you.
All right, good questions. Anybody else? All right, Senator Simmons. You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. Thank you, Chairman Blackwell. We appreciate you. All right, now back to Senator Thompson on Senate Bill 2308.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2308 was brought to me at the request of the city of Gulfport. And basically they want to be able to increase the penalties for zoning violations. To have that option. So on line 8, the deletion there is correcting a typo that's in the existing law. And then in lines 11 and 12 adds the possibility for civil penalties for violations of state law. That's a brief explanation. Bill, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for Senator Thompson? Senator Simmons?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to let the committee know that this bill is supported by MML. From my understanding, without this language, the only penalty was a criminal penalty, and they want the option to have administrative and civil penalties.
That's correct.
Yep.
And I wasn't sure that I received favorable response from my folks that are on MML, but I wasn't sure if they'd taken official positions. So I didn't know.
Yes.
Okay. thank
So
you.
what problem is this seeking to remedy? You got some examples of what we're trying to address here?
There's a couple of properties called that where there's a blatant zoning violation, ongoing zoning violation, but the city really doesn't have a means to address it besides criminal penalties. This would create the possibility for the city in its ordinance to adopt some administrative or civil penalties.
Okay. That's criminal penalties. I mean, that's already in the link.
That's already,
Okay, so we're not adding criminal.
this,
Okay,
this is adding the possibility for the municipality to adopt administrative or civil penalties in its zoning ordinances.
gotcha. All right. I know some of you represent some municipalities maybe, so is that something that you're? Okay. Any other questions for Senator Thompson? All right, Senator Thompson for motion.
Title sufficient do pass.
You heard the motion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
All right, motion to rise and report.
Yeah,
Senator England,
rise and report.
heard the motion, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed, nay? The ayes have it. No problem. Yeah.